Entrepreneurship sounds so sexy. Entrepreneurship, so French. Entrepreneurship is actually a French word. Now these days, guys like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and many more have made this entrepreneurial story so sexy. That's why entrepreneurship is these days one of the most hot topics in the world. Especially now after COVID, a lot of people are looking for ways to better their own lives and to maybe start again. And entrepreneurship offers this to normal people. I always say entrepreneurship is the great equalizer, because anyone, anywhere, can apply entrepreneurial techniques and change their circumstances to move from where they are now to immense possibilities. And that is what's called the window of opportunity. Also a key concept in entrepreneurial process. But I want to put a spin on the concept of entrepreneurship. And you will not find this in any business book. But maybe the way I present it to you will be interesting. And maybe it will give you a new perspective. And by breaking it down in the phrases, I want to show something interesting to you.
Do you realize what we're doing?
Trust me.
First, take your hand off me.
I'm trying to help you out.
Then I would rather you grab my arm.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's so dark out here.
Now, the word entrepreneurship starts with enter. Yes. Somewhere you have to enter through a window. Not through a door, through a window. A window of opportunity. Now, what's the next part of the word entrepreneurship? We've now said enter is to enter into a window of opportunity. The next term is neur. Now, according to Wikipedia, neur is the base word for neuroscience, understanding the brain. So, entrepreneur is entering the brain, entering the neuro. Have you ever asked yourself where in the brain is your creativity located? Well, the way I understand it is your creativity is based in your frontal lobes, the front part of your brain. The frontal lobe is responsible for a couple of very interesting aspects in the entrepreneur's life. Now, the prefrontal cortex is involved in many brain functions. One of the most important is executive function, or the ability to self-regulate and plan ahead. Now that sounds like something that is important to the wannabe entrepreneur, to plan ahead. It also controls behavior and impulses. It's responsible for delaying instant gratification, not an aspect that is good for the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur always has a long-term vision. It regulates your emotions, and as we all know, the entrepreneurial process can be very emotional at certain stages. The frontal cortex is very important in your ability to plan. Also, the frontal cortex is responsible for decision making. And you will know every entrepreneur sometimes faces hard decisions to make. And one of the most important functions of the frontal cortex is solving problems. Because the entrepreneur is faced basically on a daily basis with problems. And your ability to solve these problems are based in your frontal cortex. Now, also very important for entrepreneurs is the ability to make long-term decisions, to set long-term goals. And this is also where the frontal cortex plays a crucial role in the functioning of our brains. The frontal cortex also balances short-term rewards with future goals. balancing short-term rewards with future goals. As you progress in your entrepreneurial journey, you will find those small moments, those individual moments, those special days where you've achieved something. And you know that this small achievement is just part of your bigger goal. Maybe it's the first big contract that you negotiate. Maybe it's that first major order that keeps your business afloat when times are tough. The frontal cortex is also responsible for changing your behavior when situations change. It also helps you see and predict the consequences of your behavior. The frontal cortex also enables you to be able to consider many streams of information, because you will be faced with a lot of information and you need to also be able to consider these streams of information. The frontal cortex also helps you to be able to focus your attention. And most entrepreneurs sometimes struggle with attention deficit syndrome. You're easily distracted. As I said, I've taken the word entrepreneurship and I've broken it down in enter, preneur. Now, preneur is pre-neuron, and in the brain it's the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex helps the entrepreneur in his entrepreneurial journey. The prefrontal cortex also affects your personality. A historic example of what happens when a person's prefrontal cortex is damaged of a guy called Phineas Cage. Now, Phineas Cage's prefrontal cortex was damaged by a metal rod going through his skull. Wow. He survived, but his personality changed. He became impulsive and lost the ability to plan. So that is why it's maybe important also for the wannabe entrepreneur to understand, where does your entrepreneurial spirit come from in your head, in your brain. And I'm no neuro expert, I'm no expert of the brain, but it seems like the prefrontal cortex is essential in the entrepreneurial process.
Creativity is absolutely for everyone. I firmly believe this. I think if you're the driest accountant with the plastic pocket pen protector, it's in how you interact with the world. There's artistry in everything that we do.
What is it that's special about the human brain that allows creativity to happen? Because when you look at us compared to all the other species on the earth, we have very similar brains. I mean, but we're running around the planet doing something unbelievable. You don't have squirrels going to the moon, or dogs inventing the internet, or cows doing theater plays for one another, or any of the gajillion things that we do. What is below all of that? What is the basic cognitive software that's running in the human brain that takes ideas in and smushes them up and crunches them, and it's like a food processor that's constantly spitting out new ideas?
So many of you might have heard of the left brain, right brain myth about creativity, that the left brain is not related to creativity much at all because it's really boring and logical and super serious and analytical, and that the right brain is where all the artistic beauty comes out and that it's very poetic. Well, the reality is that creativity involves interaction of lots of different brain networks that rely on both the left side and the right side of the brain.
It really is the most creative people are using both sides of the brain together. So this is an important concept, that the brain is subdivided into two major hemispheres. We have two of each structure. Almost all the structures of our brain are paired. So the idea is, well, one side of the brain is important for certain things and the other side of the brain is important for other things. And the one thing we can say for sure is, yes, language is on the left side of the brain. But for creativity, it actually makes more sense to me that with a function so broad as that, you would benefit from having the most crosstalk possible between all parts of your brain. In fact, that's exactly what the neuroscience is showing.
When you have lots of different parts of the brain that are communicating with each other to solve a certain task, then it's called a brain network. And you find that creativity draws on multiple interacting brain networks. In particular, it draws on three brain networks that seem to be absolutely essential to creativity across whatever field it is, whether or not it's science or it's art. One of those brain networks that's important is what's called the executive attention network. And the executive attention network allows you to integrate lots of information in your head at one time, hold stuff in your working memory, maintain strategies that you're currently working on at one time so you don't forget what your strategy is or forget what you already did and then redo it. The executive attention network is also helpful for inhibiting obvious responses or the first things that come to your mind. And so creativity is important to access remote associations. So the executive attention network is going to be helpful to inhibit the most immediate obvious things that come to mind. So the second major brain network that's important is the default mode network, but I like to call it the imagination network because it's very active, it's highly active every time we turn our attention, our focus of attention inward, and we focus on our daydreams, we focus on our future goals, on when we're ever trying to take the perspective of someone else. So it's very important for having compassion for someone else because it allows us to imagine what someone else is thinking or feeling. And so that's the imagination brain network. And then the third major brain network that's important for creativity that I think is a very underrated brain network, it's called the salience brain network. And that's associated with what is most salient in our environment, what is most interesting to us. Before we think through consciously about a creative activity, and even before we activate our imagination, there's a process before both of that where we have a subconscious process where the salient brain network tags things as interesting or not interesting in our environment, and it either feeds it to our imagination network or to our executive attention network to pay attention to. Creativity involves the interaction of all three. It's when we're captivated by the moment, we're mindful, but we're also imaginative, and we're also motivated and passionate to engage in the creative activity.
What's special about the human brain is that we, during the evolution of the cortex, got a lot more space in between input and output. So other animals have these much closer together, so when they get some stimulus, they make a essentially reflexive response. In humans, as the cortex expanded, there's a lot more room there, which means that inputs can come in and sort of percolate around and get stored and get thought about, and then maybe you make an output or maybe you don't. And there's one other thing that happened with the expansion of the cortex, which is that we got a much bigger prefrontal cortex. That's the part right behind the forehead. And that is what allows us to simulate what ifs, to separate ourselves from our location in space and time and think about possibilities. Well, what if I did that? What if I had done that? What if I could do that? And so we do this all of the time. And the amazing part is now there are almost 8 billion brains running around the planet. And as a result, the creativity of our species has gone up in this mad, amazing way because there's so much raw material to draw on. And there are so many of us that are constantly saying, well, what if this, what if that?
Creativity requires both intelligence and imagination. Creativity requires our ability to know what has come before so we can stand on the shoulder of giants, but it also requires the ability to have great foresight and vision to imagine the world the way that it could be. And when we combine the two, I think that makes us much more likely we'll have creativity.
So what have we done up to now? We've said entrepreneurship can be broken down in enter a window of opportunity, pre-neuro, prefrontal cortex, and then the last one is ship. Now we all know ships. One of the things the entrepreneur needs to do is to build a big ship. Something like the Star Trek USS Enterprise. That's a massive ship.
Cleared space dock, Captain. All ships ready for work.
Set course for Vulcan.
Aye, aye, Captain. Course laid in.
Maximum warp. Punch it.
Post. I'm Hikaru Sulu.
And you are a pilot, right?
Very much so, sir. I'm I'm not sure what's wrong here.
Is the parking brake on?
No. I'll figure it out. I'm just.
Have you disengaged the external inertial dampener?
Ready for warp, sir.
Let's punch it.
One of Elon Musk's ships can take us to Mars at warp speed. The biggest ship was ever built, and maybe you've seen the movie, was the Titanic. So if you build a small ship, there's a good chance that your small ship, your dinghy, your rowboat will not survive. So wannabe entrepreneur, if you want to start this journey, make sure you build a big ship. One better than the Titanic, maybe a starship. Not a dinghy, not a rowboat, because this ship needs to carry you. This ship needs to be strong enough to help you through the storms. This ship must be so strong that it can withstand all the onslaughts of all the storms. And then when you reach calm waters, you can enjoy your ship. Maybe you can have a luxury ship, a luxury yacht, because your ship needs to be strong enough so that it does not break in the storm. It does not break when it hits an iceberg. Well, the best thing is actually to avoid the icebergs. And that is where the function of your prefrontal cortex comes in. So that you can take the information that's in front of you and you can navigate your ship to go past the icebergs. And then maybe one day you can sit on the deck of your ship and you can enjoy a nice cocktail watching the sunset with your beloved on your side. Because you want to take them on your ship. That's why you need to build a strong ship, so that you and the ones you love can enjoy this ship, this voyage. Bon voyage. Have a nice journey.